All right. Good morning. I see Trish has first blood. Good morning, everybody. Megan's with us, and apparently Miss Cindy's in there somewhere. So I don't see a comment from Miss Cindy yet, but we were talking the other day about trying to send Miss Cindy a Rumble Premium subscription. Cindy, I went looking to do that, and I think before I can, you need to go and sign up for a free Rumble account and then actually follow the Brushfire Mind on Rumble. And I think once you do that, I can send you a subscription. Get this there. Okay, there we go. So this morning we're going to be talking a little bit about RFK Jr., HHS, and food dye. So I broadly speaking, I support a lot of the ideas that RFK Jr. is putting forward as far as making America healthy again. Um, and when I say ideas, I mean specifically that as Americans broadly, we do need to be thinking more about our health, about especially what we eat, right? Um, about the exercise that we do. You know, I might have to be a big old hypocrite on some of this stuff, because I'm a disabled veteran. I have some limitations on the activities I can engage in. Like, for example, I no longer run 100 miles a week. That's just not in the cards anymore. And that's been behind me for a long time. It's been God, almost 13 years since I went for a run. And I probably will never go for a run again as part of, a healthy activity routine. But I still do some calisthenics. I still, get out and I go do work, and the work I do, the photography work I do, I'm moving equipment around. It's not crazy heavy equipment. But a camera on a tripod, picking it up and moving it around all day, walking, a lot of up and down stairs. But so I get my steps in, as it were. But broadly speaking, as Americans, we've become a very sedentary society, and in part that's because we've got smartphones and people want to just sit there and twiddle their thumbs and doom scroll on X and Instagram, etc. Not great for you. Uh, but that's stuff that you can do for yourself. And where I fall a little, where I find myself a little bit in conflict, politically, philosophically, ideologically, with characters like RFK is, and I'm not going to say that I'm 100% against it, but I am extremely skeptical and cautious of government action generally. So, excuse me. So, where we're at right now, we've got RFK in charge of HHS. So, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in charge of the Health and Human Services. He's Secretary of Health and Human Services, and he is, especially right now, at least, he's especially vocally concerned about food coloring, food dyes. And, one might think, oh, okay, so you're talking about the coloring, right? There's a reason that it's just listed as red number 2 or orange B or yellow number 5, etc., right? Because it's just food coloring. Yeah, except it's not, right? Go out in the yard and find the bush that produces yellow and nothing else. There's not one, right? Go find the bush that produces red and nothing else, right? No, these food dyes are things like coal tar derivatives, uh, castor anal gland extracts, different types of ground beetle shells, right? That's where these food colorings come from. They come from things that you if you knew what it was, you would have nothing to do with it as much as possible. And this is it most especially affects our children, because the places that the let me try to put this in the correct order so I don't tangle it up. The food colorings that are of the most concern are those that are used to make the most vivid, bright colors, right? They're the color. It's the colors, like brightly colored jelly beans, candies. Have any more pictures here? No. So, but you got your bright colors like that, right? You got your bright colors like these on the screen here. And many of those are derived from ingredients that you would never consume if you were told what they were, right? Certain types of insects, certain types of glandular extracts from various different animals, coal tar derivatives. Pitt Danny mentions petroleum derivatives, a lot of nasty stuff in there. And recent medical studies are suggesting that that they have a high effect on the obesity epidemic and the ADHD epidemic. And we haven't even covered the ADHD thing yet. There was a study recently, something like nearly half of children right now are on some kind of ADHD medication. And a recent study, it wasn't even a study, it's more like an expose. We got some of the doctors that kind of originated the mass ramp up of ADHD drugs. They basically confessed, kind of like Fauci and the 6 feet social distancing thing. Well, we just kind of pulled it out of our asses. There was never any science behind it. We were really just trying to sell the drugs. Oh, is that what happened? Is that what happened? So all of us who've been saying for decades now that, hey, maybe it's not a great idea to take little boys and drug them because you want them to act like little girls. In fact, maybe the fact that the public education system is almost wholly manned by women. You've got little boys growing up, daddies at work, daddies who are in their lives, fathers like me who are still dedicated to their wives and children. Hey, we're not here all the time because somebody's got to go out and slay the mammoth. And then you send them to a public school, and their entire adult influence comes from women, right? I'm trying as much as I can, more and more, to spend time, especially not just with my children, but most especially with my son. I've got 3 daughters and a little boy. I want to spend time with my girls. I do. I want to spend time with all my children, right? Like, we went out to dinner last night and we had a conversation about hobbies, and I was explaining to my kids, listen, I'm not telling you that when you're 9, 12, 14 years old, you have to know what you're going to do in the future, which you have to go ahead and decide that you want to be an astronaut or a doctor or this or that. What I'm telling you is I want you to get hobbies. I want you to try some stuff. I want you to screw up. I want you to try something that sounds interesting and you find out it sucks and you never do that again before you're doing stupid shit like going to college, declaring a major, deciding it's not for you, having spent the money on a semester or a year of college and deciding, well, I want to do something completely different. You still have to pay for that other stupid thing you did. So go ahead and do your stupid now while I'm paying for it before you find yourself in a hole. Let's do this, right? So instead of like my 14-year-old daughter, for example, instead of going and playing basketball, which we have learned through experimentation that she hates, right? I mean, I've got a 14-year-old daughter who is over 6 feet tall, and turns out she doesn't like basketball. So what's next? We're building an apiary. That's right. She's decided that she wants to spend several thousand of my dollars on becoming a beekeeper. You know what? We might find out that it sucks. We might find out that she hates it. We might have a ball. We might make a fortune. We might decide that she doesn't like it, but I've spent enough money on putting the damn things on the back of the property that it's worth hiring some other teenager to tend to the bees and make honey. Who knows? But you got to play. You got to go with it. You can't, you can't completely insulate your kids. So that's why I'm somewhat on board for RFK coming in and using law and the mechanisms of government to do something to protect children. But I'm always extremely skeptical of that. Absolutely every time I hear a politician say, well, think of the children, I kind of get a little murdery. It kind of makes me say, I remember this one time I heard somebody say, think of the children. And what they were arguing was that the little girls in Afghanistan shouldn't be in school with the little boys. And they started cutting noses and ears off of people. And we had to get a little murdery about it. So every time I hear think of the children come out of a politician, I immediately feel like I'm being manipulated and I need to be concerned. That said, these bright colored dyes they're used primarily in things like candy and breakfast cereal. Now, we don't do a lot of breakfast cereal around my place, right? We like eggs, right? We're raising chickens now because, we like eggs. And my 12-year-old, my Penelope, the one that's taking point on raising the chickens, she has made it very clear that we are raising chickens for eggs, and she does not want us to be doing meat birds yet. And okay, cool, 12-year-old girl, right? Maybe in a couple or 3 years, we'll get her over that emotional attachment to the chickens as pets, and we can go on to meat birds. But if we never do, if all I ever get out of the yard is eggs, I'm okay with that. That's fine too. But I do think of the children. As much as I get skeptical when a politician says it, I do think of the children. I get especially skeptical when a politician like JFK says it because, right, even though he's a big guy in the Trump administration now, he's a big lib. He's a infanticide to post-birth guy. So, when a eugenicist like that says think of the children, I get concerned. But I've got buddies whose kids are fat, and I worry about them. I worry about them a lot. And not just fat, but sick and lazy. Fat, sick, and lazy is no way to go through life, guys. It really isn't. Right? I've been fat, sick, and lazy. And, of my own doing. Things like soda pop. When I went to enlist in the Army, when I first decided I wanted to enlist in the U.S. Army, I was weighing in around 360 pounds. Now I'm 6.5 feet tall. I can carry 360 without looking totally sloppy, but 360 is a lot of weight, right? That's quite a bit more. That's about 20% above what I'm at right now. And 20% of your body weight is a big deal, right? It affects your everything. And when I needed to cut the weight in order to get into the Army, in order to make weight for physical fitness to get in the Army, I quit drinking sweet tea and I quit drinking soda pop, right? So for the period as I was getting ready to enlist, I switched to black coffee and water with lime, and that was it. No other beverages. Black coffee in the morning, water with lime all day. That was probably the biggest part of my dietary shift back then. And I didn't need to make a bunch of other changes. Like I've got a sweet tooth, but it's not out of control. I don't eat a lot of candy. I don't eat a lot of desserts and sweets and donuts and stuff. I've always been a big meat and potatoes kind of guy, but I'll eat a lot of meat and potatoes when I sit down to eat a meal. Or at least I used to. I don't do that so much anymore. But basically, I say all that to say this: back then, just cutting out sweet tea and soda pop, I lost like 60, 65 pounds in a little under a month. And it was cutting out the sugar. And the other thing, back then I had, I'm an Army brat, so I already had access to the Army airfield there in Savannah, Georgia. Shit, help me out, Sergeant Major. Is that Hunter? Is that Hunter Army Airfield? I think it's Hunter. So I'd go to the gym every day over there. Back then, Spike TV was running Deep Space Nine, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, 3 hours every day. And so I would just go and watch 3 hours of Deep Space Nine on an elliptical machine. And that's how I made weight to enlist. Okay, yeah, Sergeant Major confirms it's Hunter Army Airfield. I thought so. I think there's one in Hawaii that's Hunter something other than Army Airfield. It may be an Air Force base, but there's something on Oahu that I always mix up with Hunter Army Airfield, and it's not Hickam, it's something else. Anyway, so when I look at the government wanting to do something, I get skeptical. But there is, we're going to take a look at this article from Reuters. U.S. to phase out many synthetic food dyes, Kennedy and FDA heads say. The FDA to revoke authorization of 2 synthetic food colorings in the upcoming months. agency will work with industry to eliminate 6 others by end of 2026. FDA plans to authorize 4 new natural color additives in the coming weeks. And scientists say health issues officials linked to dyes need more study. So the health issues that are linked to dyes, their studies suggest that ADHD, obesity, and diabetes are all related to the dyes. So the argument, the science rather, in that is essentially that many of these food colorings, and like I said, coal tar derivative, guys, the yellow stuff, it's coal tar derivative. Tar, right? Let me just pour some dino bones in my coffee cup. And actually, that doesn't sound all that bad. You ever had a steaming hot cup of straight bone broth? But that's not what coal tar derivative is. Back on topic. Anyway, the idea is that the various synthetic dyes have an effect on your metabolism, and that metabolic effect is what is one of the key inciting factors in things like ADHD, obesity, and diabetes. You're not because the dyes are not natural products and you don't digest them well, then that problem with your metabolism, with your digestion, means that you do not efficiently use the fuel that you're putting in your body. That's why I likes me a big old fat steak. Right? God, we just had Easter Sunday and dinner at the farm with the family. Maul and the Smadge, they broke out a prime rib that was cooked to absolute perfection. A ham, so they got a cured ham, and Dad smoked that son of a bitch on an open pit, and it was witchcraft on the bone. And then there were the lamb, the rack of lamb, which admittedly we could have done better with, Sergeant Major. But that's one where we're experimenting. Like we've both done rack of lamb before. We know how to do rack of lamb. We haven't done it on that fire pit before, and we were kind of playing with, putting it on the hot side of the fire, getting that sear on, and then bringing it over to bring it up to temp. And I think the only thing we missed there is we just we didn't. Yeah, there's a lot to autopsy on what happened with the rack of lamb, but that's neither here nor there. It was delicious, and we had the leftovers for dinner last night, and that was, or no, night before last. Last night was Taco Tuesday, and that was again delicious. Patrick Brown mentions high fructose corn syrup. That stuff, Patrick, that's just straight poison. High fructose corn syrup. If I had my way, everything being used to produce high fructose corn syrup would be converted to fuel, and we would stop ingesting that poison. So a lot of this kind of winding down, getting rid of the food dyes. There's some hope that working with the various food producing companies, most especially the ones producing brightly colored breakfast cereal and candy, that we can get them to voluntarily phase out these synthetic dyes, synthetic food colorings, and use alternatives, right? A lot of conversations been had about Canadian food and European food, where they've already banned a lot of these food colorings and artificial dyes that we're looking to get rid of now, and they use strawberries for the reds and blueberries for the blues and schnozberries for the schnozes, right? And the what we've seen in America, and probably seen it around the world as well, but America is where the money moves. So that's where it's most visible. What we've seen in America is, in the past, several companies, and I remember some of this in the late 90s, especially with breakfast cereals, like your Captain Crunch, your Fruit Loops, Cheerios, well, not Cheerios, they're not really colorful, Fruit Loops, things like that. They had a version that they put out where it was all natural food coloring. So, strawberries and blueberries and all that to make the food coloring. And the colors were not as vivid and bright. And what they discovered is, and this is where I have a real hard time with the question of whether or not to have government intervention. And bear with me, I'm gonna slow down a little bit here, and I may struggle to put these in the right order. This may be something I need to come back to again and lay out more carefully. But there's kind of a double-edged sword here. I don't like the idea of government saying you can't do X. I don't like the idea of the nanny state generally. But as long as we've got a situation where we've already seen it happen, that the food producers have tried to use the natural colors in a marketing blitz and a marketing push, and make no mistake, that was a health thing, right? That was their whole brand when they went to the natural dyes briefly. And they said, we're making our food more healthy for you. And the consumer said, we don't want healthy food. We want bright colored plastic shit. And since the consumer preferred the bright colored plastic shit, the food companies, instead of producing both, produced the one that people were buying. So my preference would be to not ban anything because the government is at best a necessary cooperative evil. My preference would be to not ban anything, but if the fact we know from seeing it done historically, is that given the choice, the public writ large will make the wrong decision, then the market responds to the public making the wrong decision by supplying that demand and not the other demand. Because you have two demands and one is much higher. And the higher demand, the people demanded poisonous, plastic, brightly colored trash. So I'm afraid that without the government intervention, then those of us who would have preferred to eat an actual steak instead of a 3D printed human flavored cheeseburger will be denied the choice because the corporate entity writ large has a reasonable motivation to focus their supply on the demand. Right? So I would like to believe that given the choices, people will make good choices, but the statistics just don't bear it out. I think Sergeant Major says, what I hear you saying is let people make educated choices. Problem is the public is lazy. Yes. So the public, and that's the thing, is the educated choices. And the public is not well educated. Right? A lot of this is a problem with public schools. Our public schools are a threat to national security and public health. Like my Vera said the other day, I sure am glad I learned all that geometry. It helped me a lot during polygon season. Right? Because we didn't learn how to file our taxes in high school. We didn't learn that yellow dye number XYZ is a coal tar derivative. The red dye number ABC is a castor anal gland extract. We didn't learn that the blue food coloring is made from ground beetles in high school. We didn't learn how to apply for a job, how to set up a C Corp or an S Corp, how to form an LLC, how to operate a business without piercing the corporate veil. We didn't learn anything of value. I remember being drilled repeatedly on the dates. Like it was the most important thing, and it didn't make sense to me then. Like it was the most important thing in the world that after I graduated high school, I'd be able to remember what happened on July 3rd, 1776. Or rather, what was supposed to happen, and then bitches on slow-ass horses didn't show up until the 4th of July. But that's okay. Right? Maybe we learned a little something about punctuality and keeping our promises, Gwinnett. But the fact is, a study of history has a great deal of value. That is true. And this is one of those places. This is going to have to be one of the deep dives eventually, because this is one of those places where the manipulation of the language really hurts you. We understand generally that a study of history has value. That history doesn't repeat, it rhymes. And if you understand what has happened before, like, for example, companies have tried to do the natural food dye gambit in America before, and it failed because Americans want bright colored, shiny plastic garbage. right? So a study of history is valuable. You know what doesn't matter in the example I just gave? When. The exact dates, right? Now, when it happened, yes, when it happened, right? Was it a year ago or was it 20 years ago? That matters a bit. So, there's some value in knowing the dates there, but that I know that the document was signed on, December 3rd, 1993, to make the decision to go forward with that program, and then it failed. Okay, no. The only place the timing has any value is if I'm going to say, okay, what was the zeitgeist in America? What was the public sentiment in America around food security, food being close to primary food sources, understanding the health value of your food, etc. What was the public sentiment? What did people think of health and wellness and all that related to food versus what is it now? And what was the difference between that point in history and today? Because another thing that's worth understanding, McDonald's will feed you garbage today. Now, when McDonald's first opened, back in San Bernardino, ring-a-ding-ding, they were selling food. They were selling a no-shit, all beef, just ground beef, a no-shit hamburger, and French fries fried in beef tallow with pickles and onions and on the goodness on the burger. And the thing that was novel was not that they had figured out a way to use sawdust or whatever they do to make the meat cheap. It was that they had taken a kitchen and converted it into a Henry Ford style production line with a streamlined menu. It's like, look, there's burgers and there's not a menu. You come up to the window and you say 1, 2, or 3, right? And we say that'll be a nickel or a dime or 15 cents. And then we turn around and we grab the burger, with or with, okay, so there's your choice, with or without cheese, right? Burger or cheeseburger. Cool. Simple. It's quick. It's easy. Bam. You're done. Right? But now they've taken it, they've gone, so there's only 2 ways to make money. Right? Markup and volume. You either sell a whole lot of stuff or you sell it at a high profit margin. So McDonald's original model was distribution, high volume. Get them in, get them out. Get them in, get them out. Sell as many burgers as you can. That model over time has shifted. And part of that is due to market forces. Part of that is due to corporate interests. So instead of raising the margin, right, they have increased the margin, but rather than increasing the margin by raising the markup, they've taken to increasing the margin by lowering the input, lowering the cost, by buying cheaper ingredients. Well, that's a thing that's happened all across the board, right? Soda pops, instead of being made with cane sugar, are now made with high fructose corn syrup, right? You've got cheaper and cheaper and cheaper ingredients going into your food and your products. Y'all, I cannot wait. It's going to be a few more months because I'm right now, if I take the camera out there, it's just rows of dirt with a couple of leaves poking up off the top of it. I can't wait to start taking the camera out in the yard and showing off the garden because we are going to be eating a lot out of pocket. Right? We're going to be like, hey, I went to the butcher down the street. I bought 50 pounds of ground beef, and when it's time for dinner, we want to have cheeseburgers. My wife bakes fresh burger buns. We take locally sourced ground meat. We chop in onions that we grew in the yard, throw them on the griddle, smash burgers, and then, hey, send one of the kids out to the front yard. Hey, we're about to have burgers. They're coming off the grill in 2 minutes. Go grab 2 tomatoes and a head of lettuce out of the yard and meet me in the kitchen, because that shit's going to be fresh as fresh, right? I know not everybody can do that. But let me be clear about something, guys. If you can't do that now, and if you don't have a plan to get where you can do something like that in the nearest possible future, you need to start rearranging your priorities. So I'm going to end on this. I'm going to pull something up real quick, and then I'm going to end on this. Because I think Crowder is onto something here, and I want you guys to take a minute and go check it out. Crowder just released here it is. Damn it. I don't want it to play. I want you to see okay. Globalist Cities, A New World Order. Go check that one out. I'll go ahead and drop the link in the chat here for you guys. And let me see if I can Can I? Come on, damn it. Let me make the change. Okay, sorry about that. That did not quite go according to plan, but yeah, sorry about that. I lost the feed for just a second, but I dropped this link to the video, to Crowder's video on Rumble, into the description here. This is not related to it's very loosely related to what we've been talking about this morning with the food stuff. Crowder just did this documentary on globalist cities, and it's got a bit to do with the whole New World Order thing. Y'all remember a few years ago, the World Economic Forum put out that insanely dystopian, scary video where they said, you will own nothing, you will live in the pods, and you will eat the bugs, and you will be happy. Right? We don't want that. We don't want the bugs, and we want to live. We want to live and be free, right? I don't want to live in a nasty city, and I highly recommend to all of you that you get the hell away from metropolitan cities. They are death traps. Get out. Get out. So, yeah, that's all I've got for this morning. Again, I highly recommend y'all go and watch Crowder's video about globalist cities when you have a chance later. And Mario's taking some time off from the show this week to spend time with his family. His brother's visiting from out of town. And so we'll have Mario back for the Saturday show, the deep dive this Saturday evening. And per Mario's request, I'm keeping the deep dives. They're going to be a surprise. So you'll know what Saturday's deep dive is going to be on Saturday, 4 or 5 hours before we go live. So we'll have that coming up for you this Saturday. And of course, tomorrow is not yet. Tomorrow's Thursday, not Firearms Friday. So we'll have a regular show for you tomorrow morning. Thanks for watching this morning, guys. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.